not this. This actually was whole semester's worth of one by one students making changes to it. And there were still remnants of the team who just graduated from graduate school and thought that it has to be the way it is in all books. I'm changing that now up with your feedback so that it's for your point of view. The one thing I have missing, I'll show you where I think I have something missing. So here, on the first part, you guys told me that the objective function is kind of what you see first. It may not be at the end of the problem. I say sometimes, and I italicize it, it's at the end of the problem. And some of your homeworks, it's not at the end of the problem. So, you probably have to hunt for it. And the problem that Annabelle and I looked at for the homework, it didn't even say that they're trying to maximize profits. It wasn't stated specifically. We had to kind of infer from the problem, which annoyed me because, that you have to be clear about what you want if you're someone from outside asking. But these two are tied to each other, and I put a stock problem in here. So this is something that was given to me by 104 students that were taking it more than one time, so they had not passed it the first time. And for them to go back and forth on an example was difficult. So what I did is I put a stock problem in, and then I used this in my upper level classes, and it really helps. So you have a stock problem that shows you where everything goes. I made one more column on this on the next thing I'll show you, but these two are tied. Rubric is going to ask you, even if it doesn't physically ask you for it, that you've labeled, these are my decision variables, these are my constraints, these are my objective function. So next step is to go in and actually put the unit of measurement. The units are important. It's not because I said so. Everything here is important. If you have hours and it's something that you're trying to minimize, then you probably would want to put hours here. Depends on what the statement of the problem is. But get the units in there too, like if it's a total amount. So here I took this problem here, and it says really at the last end, it says that the company is trying to maximize profits. They laid it out for me. So I know that my objective function is going to look something like maximizing profits. So you can hunt for, okay, it says how many desks and bookshelves. So those are my variables. And then I can put together a profit function. That's what you guys said. It's really going against what I want to do because I want to define my variables first. But okay, if that's what you guys are seeing first, that's what you guys are seeing first. Then at X and Y's, because they're linked, you have to label them. There'll be points on that rubric that ask you what these are, even if it's not clearly stated. Then you would go through the problem. If you want to use this worksheet, students' eyes go to the numbers, go through number by number. The first number in the word problem is 50, and it has a dollar symbol next to it, and it says it's the cost per unit desk. And I literally put per unit here because that's not a total. That's a per unit. That means in the last column, you have to transform it into something that's a total. So 50 is not, it's a per unit, it's the price per desk, so I have to change this so it's 50x. Then you get the next one for free because they said 75 per bookshelf. So 75 is the cost per unit. So it's almost everything's copy paste except it's Y instead of X to get to your total. So these are the total costs. If you sum it, they're going to be the total cost. So you get that equation put together for you as going through the table. Next number is 300. That's the total amount of that can be made. It's a production. So that's a total. That tells you what the right-hand side of one of your constraints are. The numbers that are total without X's and Y's tells you that it's a constraint. It's the number of equations that you have. 20,000 is the total budget. That's a constraint. How do I know those are constraints and not anything else? Process of elimination, actually, profits are my objective function, so everything else must be a constraint. So that's your added benefit if you found that first. That you know that these things have to be something with a constraint. But they also say something in the word problem. It cannot exceed, or at most. Those are keywords that tell you that there's something to do with constraints. And so 300 is the total number of units made. 20,000 is the total cost. And then the rest I already have, but I wrote it down here in case you didn't find this in the word problem. You can still put it together. I think the word problem Annabelle and I worked didn't have it straight up front. And so we had to go through the problem and kind of find everything. Ask me questions. Put notes on here if that help you. Because the notes that you put on here that help you, you can just copy them right down into your sheet that you're bringing in. Then the next part, formulate the constraints. There's going to be two constraints because in my table I had two numbers in there that had to do with constraints. And so there's going to be two real constraints. What is missing from here, and I will not note this down, is x bigger equals 0 and y bigger equals 0 are constraints as well. I don't have it here. I'm going to put it on a new worksheet that has is x equals 0 greater equals 0 and y greater than equals 0 are circle if that's a constraint. So it's usually constraint for everything. So why not have it there so you don't forget it? But guess what? If you draw that feasible region and you have it listed as a constraint, what would happen? Let's suppose you knew it. X equals 0. I'm in the first quadrant. I'm going to draw my feasible region, but I haven't listed it as a constraint earlier on. What could happen? Dot points because it has a rubric that goes with it, and I have to match it to everybody else. So, hey, you're strategic, or it's strategic, but that's part of what you do as a student. I'm not going to lie to you. That it is not supposed to lie to you, right? So that is the truth. You have to have it because the rubric has to be matched up. So I'm going to put that in here. It's not in the handout that I gave you. Then I have two real ones. This is the total amount of cost because I have it from the side of my table. If you look on the other side, they have to be less or equal to 20,000. 300 was the total amount of productions. So it's this is my cap. Sometimes it's here. If you look at these boards up here, there has to have been a greater than somewhere. So you have to be careful to pick the right one on these things. And so x plus y is less equal to 300 is my second constraint. And then the profit thing, in case you didn't find it earlier, you would have to have it at the end. Okay, any questions how to get through one of these? I make it look easy. I make it look easy because it's just like watching NBA. It looks easy, even though my grandmother thought she could do it too. It looks easy because they're professionals at it. That's my professional job.
So for sheets, could you literally make a list of this? You just have to handwrite it.
Handwrite, yeah. And if you want to save space, you don't need all the rows of that table. You just need to right. And you could even put your stock example up there. You could pick the example on your homework that you thought was the hardest and put it on there, right? You could do whatever you wanted.